Hey, I want to welcome everyone to the May 2022 MSMF podcast. I'm joined today, as usual, by Jay Peters and Cody Redding. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing good.
Doing great.
Excellent. We got a fun topic today. It's not one that we usually talk about because to some extent it's not quite always our bailiwick. We get people dressed up and ready to go see attorneys, but we're going to dig into some kind of uncommon or overlooked estate planning issues today. And when we do our work with clients, as you guys know, when we worry about that estate planning and distribution strategy or estate blueprint, if you will, like I said, we get our clients ready to go see an attorney, and just so my friends at compliance are happy with me, we are not attorneys. The last time I checked, Jay did not go to law school. Cody did not. And I sure as heck did not go to law school, and I'm not going to law school, right? My father was a lawyer. That was plenty for me. So we're not trying to practice law today, but we are trying to point out some really critical things that often get overlooked. And the reason why, to some extent, they've been overlooked, a lot of these things have evolved relatively quickly the last few years. So a lot of you, quite possibly, when you had your estate plans, your trust drafted, this wasn't a thing. It's definitely a thing today. So 3 things I want to talk about today. I'm going to ask each of you guys to kind of jump in on this. I want to start with talking about issues relative to key contacts when someone dies or becomes disabled, and kind of tied with that is maybe just some of these fundamental access things like someone's cell phone or their computer. And Cody, I'm going to ask you to speak to that in a minute. And then Jay, I'm going to ask you to talk about password mania. Okay. In 2022, I can't even keep track of all the passwords. It used to be nothing, and we used to use simple things like the last 4 digits of our social security number, our address at home, and passwords have turned into a life of their own, and it is chaos. And there needs to be a way to keep an eye on all that because, which I'll explain after you kind of go through it, is our heirs don't automatically have access to everything. And if they don't have the passwords, it's a huge issue to get access to all sorts of different things. So we're going to talk about that. And lastly, the most recent term in all of this would be our digital assets or our digital footprint. Social media, email, I'm going to go through all of that. That probably is the most recent development of any of these areas and still mission critical and often overlooked. So Cody, let me start with you. Let's start with this whole concept of key contacts. I know there's some things we do, but it still generates a lot of questions, and I know we see issues with it. Walk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, we even see it in our our industry and so part of the information that we collect. So, as part of the review process, we usually go through the beneficiary summary. Now you see that there's a trusted contact on there, and we have it labeled yes or no. Well, that's just, hey, we can't get a hold of you. Who is someone that you would trust us to get a hold of that probably knows a little bit more about your whereabouts of what's going on? And that kind of piggybacks on, who are your key contacts outside of our area, right? So a lot of people have accountants that they use. They have lawyers that help do estate planning and trust documents. Okay, well, is there one central location where if something were to happen to you, where do we go to get that? Even on top of that, there's, especially with the digital world today, is everything is in our pocket on our phone, right? So access codes, all that kind of stuff. Well, is there a central location that if we need to get access and get into that, how do we do that? Because we just can't call Apple or Samsung and get that. They're just not going to release.
Mine's 1352, Cody, if you want to try mine.
In the old head now. And that's his ATM number as well. So.
True story.
So as we did talk about this, we're like, wow, we already have an online vault system. So there's already a central location that if the trusted contact reaches out to us, that we're going to actually have basically a one-page sheet where you can put down all of your important contacts and upload it to the vault system that we have. That will at least be a good start to it, and at least give the brain upstairs cranking and start thinking about, if I were gone today, what is some important information that maybe my beneficiaries or whatnot would need to get access to that info.
Yeah, and I would just say the one thing, Cody, so like I know we all three on a very regular basis we'll read through trusts for clients. Just they ask us, hey, do you have any questions? What should you think I ought to talk to the attorney about? And just in thinking in those trusts, so like you have the trustee, the subsequent or contingent trustee, but there's no addresses and telephone numbers inside the trust, right?
Right.
So again, organizing all that, having one central location becomes critical, because we've run into problems trying to work with clients getting retitling, estates distributed, where we don't have the contact info.
Yep.
And certainly this is a big issue, and you throw things in like somebody's cell phone, 1352, or just their computer, their laptop. What's the login, right? What's the password?
Yeah, things you just don't think about.
Right.
I know it, but
Exactly.
someone else might need to know that down the road.
100%.
Right.
And so that's a great lead in, and thank you for that to Jay, because again, I joke about password chaos, but back in the days when we all set up passwords, we look back on that now and it's laughable.
Right.
Right. And I know you got a couple stories. I mean, everything we do, somebody wants a password, create an account, right? So,
Right.
I mean, give us some perspective on password mania and how we manage that.
Yeah, and I remember, one of the root passwords that I use is something I created when I went to college. That's still the root of a lot of my passwords. I just keep making variants on the number and everything, right? You guys probably have something
Sure.
similar. And then everybody wants their own password. So that was the other thing. When I first started remembering a password, there were 3 things I needed to log into. Now I can't even count. There's just so many. That's the mania part of it, the chaos, right? And so with that, quick story. I went to buy a bat last weekend.
Wait,
and
for you or Henry?
This one's for me.
Attaboy.
This one's for me. Dad needs a bat. And I go on the website. I just want to buy a bat. Just ship it to me. They would not let me check out without creating a new profile with a new password. And it's just hard to track all these. So with that, there are a couple of different ways you can handle all these passwords. One is to use the same one over and over and over and over. And don't do that. Hackers like that. And then number 2 is going to be if you do some sort of password management. Some people have a notebook, they write everything down. That's fine if you do that. Make sure on your key contacts list that that's written down. Where is that book, right? Because we need to know where that is at some point. But then there's another alternative. Our office uses a password manager that's digital called LastPass. So I'm not recommending everybody do that, but it's a good option for someone who's interested in something like that because it securely stores all your passwords that you want. You literally have to remember one password. That's the password to LastPass. The second cool thing is you can make gibberish passwords that are not based off of my college days where I added another number, right? So you can get these really long passwords that are super secure. No hacker's going to figure them out. It's all stored in one spot. You click on it and it fills it in. So really cool programs to take care of that. And then you just pass one password on your key contacts list to if something were to happen to you. So just something to think about because in the password mania, I have no idea what most of my passwords are anymore.
Right. Well, and I'm with you because we all 3 use LastPass.
Right.
So a couple things. One, you mentioned the gibberish passwords. So a program like LastPass will create those for you.
Yes. And
Okay.
so they're completely randomized.
Right.
And so nobody's going to guess them. And even LastPass admits, we don't know what your passwords are.
Right.
That's how secure they are. So
Right. And there are, I know we use LastPass. We've used another one prior to that. There are more than a handful out there.
Yeah.
And I know, so like what to look for, like our LastPass is encrypted, which is a big deal. Maybe you could explain that a little bit and whatever else you think about LastPass people should look for in a feature set on these password managers.
So encrypted is super important because it means that when the data is being transmitted, it's not intact, right? You have to have a key on both sides. They kind of, and I'm simplifying, so if you're in IT and I said it wrong, please forgive me. But then that way it's not all the pieces of the puzzle. It has to be kind of put together on the other end,
Gotcha.
so it's secure on both ends. So something that's encrypted is super important. Something that creates its own generator of a password to me is important. And again, just having to remember one password is important to me. If I have to remember multiple, what's the point?
Right.
So.
Right, cool, great stuff. I like that. So the last thing, which we talked about and really kind of spurred this whole conversation, is probably the most recent that's gotten attention on this, and that would be what I would call our digital footprint, right? Or all of our digital assets. So you're like, what are my digital assets? Well, if you have a Facebook account, that's a digital asset, right? If you have an email account, now no one anymore in the history of man has one email account. Normally there's 2, 3, 4, 5, who knows how many email accounts, right? If you have an Android phone or an iPhone, and those take pictures anymore, they're almost automatically backed up somewhere in the cloud. And that's part of your digital footprint, right? Even your cell phone content, right? That's part of your digital footprint. Some of that is the same uploaded versus on your phone. Some of it's different. Well, guess what? You guys know this. Back in the day when all this stuff first started and we signed up for all of it and we hit the yes to the user agreement, which we didn't read, okay? What it actually said towards the end in the fine print is that we as the owner are the only ones that are allowed access to the data. The digital data, the footprint. Our heirs aren't allowed to have access to that data. Basically, when we're gone, it's locked down and nobody gets it. Now, when we first started with cell phones, it was cool. We're taking a picture of the baby or Henry getting his first hit, all that cool stuff. That's great. Okay, we'll probably keep those somewhere else. Now, there's a lot more meaningful data in our digital footprint. And I would say that the industry, government, the states, they all figured out this was a problem because those user agreements were a big issue. So, a few years ago, and I'll get this right, I promise, because I'm going to read it off the list. There's something out there, starts with an R like red, called RUFADA, which is an acronym for the Revised Uniform Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act. And
Well done. Well done.
the important part about it, you don't have to remember the name, you don't have to remember the acronym. All you got to know is that Missouri and all the surrounding states have approved it. That's where this uniform piece comes from. Number one, it lets users decide whether their digital assets will be preserved, distributed to your heirs, or destroyed. Okay, you're given that power. It doesn't make it happen. You still have to take some proactive actions. But number two, it prevents companies from disclosing the contents of your email and social media without users' consent or heirs' consent. And lastly, it standardizes the rules in each state in the uniform for access to digital assets when someone dies or becomes disabled, right? So there is now law that supports this, which is why what we've seen recently, Cody and I, we both have just recently updated our estate plans and used our good friend Carl Marcus as the estate planning attorney. And Carl includes a section in our respective trusts that talks about digital assets and what's supposed to happen with those, and the subsequent trustee has control of those, which is the first step, since the law is now there, to have it in our estate planning documents. So if it's not in your trust, or your trust was drafted 10 years ago, it's not in there, and it definitely needs to be added. The other thing is kudos to Apple, kudos to Facebook, kudos to Google, kudos to the other large tech firms that are providing us some solution out there in I want to say Al Gore's internet, but I'm not going to say that. Because they now have come up with solutions like iOS on your iPhone has a legacy contact underneath settings. And it's not filled in when you first get your phone, but you can go there under settings and fill in legacy contact. You put in their email, and they immediately send an email to that person saying, hey, you're the legacy contact. And I just did it the other day with Rosie, and it references something in there about legacy contact and death or disability, and she's like, what in the heck is this? I'm like, I'll explain later. Right? Google has the same thing. I think Google's is inactive account contact, and Facebook has something similar. So everyone is now, they're working together to try to solve this issue, because these user agreements do not provide the ability, or did not provide the ability to pass on that digital footprint or assets. And you got laws on the books. You need to pay attention to your estate plan. But these are kind of three key issues, guys, and the key contacts, the passwords, the logins, the digital footprint, all things we need to pay attention to, and all things we're happy to work with our clients to try to get them solved, right? So thanks for your time today. Appreciate everybody listening in. We're a little bit longer today than we normally are, but these are kind of movers and shakers today as it relates to estate planning documents. If you have any questions, please call us, email us, use the text line. Any friends or family you think would appreciate hearing this video, just shoot it on over to them. And we'll catch you guys next month. Thank you.